how can we make it happen so everybody feels like they're winning? It's about helping parents be able to figure things out and navigate the law. Maximum efficiency with minimum effort, mutual welfare and benefit. Those principles underscore everything I do. It's pushing out of the zone of excellence in pursuit of zone of genius. It's this line in the sand moment, and something happens that shifts everything.
Hello, and welcome to the Success Differently podcast. My name is Michelle Sorgaroli, and I am your host today. And we're being joined by our special guest, Kim Korven. Now, Kim is a family mediator, she's a settlement consultant, and she has experience as a lawyer, a judge, a mediator, a wife, and a parent. Kim helps people in conflict remember that they are the CEO of their own lives. She's known to be an enthusiastic and compassionate communicator. She's known to stay calm in troubled waters, and her ultimate passion is to help clients protect their integrity and put their family and their children first so that they can arrive at a peaceful resolution. On a personal front, we have Kim has two rescue greyhounds and a couple of rescue cats. She's a bronze medalist in judo nationals here in Canada, and she's the third generation to steward 160 acres of natural prairie in Saskatchewan, Canada. Kim, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. I listened to that description and went, holy cow.
It's funny when we hear it back, isn't it? It's like, oh, wow, there's a lot about me that I forgot, which is why we're here today.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, I'm just delighted to bring you on and have a chance to hear your story because I know it's really robust. So here we find you as having all this experience in law and in mediation and whatnot. And I understand that your real passion is about creating a safe transition for children and preserving family dignity and whatnot. Kim, when you think back to how you got started in law way back at the beginning, tell us a little bit about what got you into that journey, and we'll go from there.
Now that is a juicy story
Okay.
because I thought about law when I was 16. But I'm from a prairie populist background, so you don't trust authority
Interesting.
at all. So it was a very odd choice. And I thought about it again when I was 20 and no, no. But then when I was 25, I ended up going to Mexico on my own. And I was this world traveler by then. I'd done youth exchanges and studied Spanish in Mexico. Yeah, that had happened by then. So, I'm thinking I have it cased. Well, I got taken by timeshare people. And I didn't even have my own credit card at that age. I had my parents' credit card and I used it for down payment on a timeshare that I didn't want.
Oh my gosh.
And oh, so the shame, right? And before I had went to Mexico, I'd been thinking about like I had applied to go to law school and one law school, and I had also applied to study communications
Okay.
on the East Coast.
Mm,
And it was the timeshare experience that led me to go. Like, I never wanted to be taken
right.
like that again, right? And I spoke to a lawyer about it, and she's, oh, it says California. Don't worry about it, Kim. They won't come after you here, right? I never wanted to be taken like that again. So that was how that fork in the road
Yep.
was chosen
Isn't that interesting? It's so
because,
true. It's something in our experience in the past, and what was it about being taken specifically that was so meaningful for you in this journey?
well, it was the shame and it was the not knowing,
Mm.
right? Like it was really, because my parents let me hear about it. And I remember um, telling my mom I was going off to work and I'd been living with them. So, of course, the landline. And I said to my mom, if they phone looking for money, tell them I've taken a vow of poverty. And she's, I can't do that. And I said, well, sure you can. I'm going back to school.
Hmm.
but it was just that lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I mean, like they had my credit card the whole day, and I didn't get it back until I was signing the last of the forms. And I remember the headache and it was just, I was used to being fairly confident and successful, and it really shook
Mm,
that confidence.
interesting. So then what happened after that? Did you immediately, you took your vow of poverty, and then at
Yeah,
that
I did.
point, at that point, did you go back to school in pursuit of a law degree? Was it that your next
I
step?
did.
Hmm.
I did. And I really loved the law. Um, really, really loved it. And I was this little litigator, who whenever anybody would tell me a problem they were having, I was, oh, you need to sue this other person.
Interesting. I'm finding this curious because I think if I remember in our previous conversations, you started your legal journey in land titles, did you not?
I
Is
didn't
that right?
start there,
Oh,
but
you
it
didn't
ended
start
up
there.
there
Okay.
after my divorce. Yeah, is
Oh,
really
okay. So
where
that was later. I
I
wondered
went
if
to
it was
school.
related to the timeshare. So that's interesting. So how did you, I'm curious, before we move into the next part, I'm curious, how did you reconcile, as you started this conversation, really not respecting the law, not trusting anyone, and moving into then becoming a lawyer? Like, how did that journey um, go for you as you're reconciling those differences?
Well, I think sometimes we put things on the back burner. We don't, like, I never listened to my body. So
Mm,
it was just, I am jumping into this. And and I think that was a big part of the issue with me and law, right? Like I graduated number 4 in my class. Um, and but it was, I wanted to succeed. I wanted to be part of this community, but a part of me always questioned it, right? If I'm being really honest. And I remember before I started third year law, I was in China coordinating a young farmers exchange. All these stories you don't know. And but I had this, my shoulder and my neck got really, really incredible pain.
mhm.
And I'd hurt my neck at a judo tournament when I was 15. And I just thought that's what it was. Looking back on it, I think it was my body saying, is this the right place for you? Right?
Yeah. So how did it, yeah, so you're thinking, you have that wisdom today. You said you never listened to your body or your body didn't have a role in
Mm-hmm.
your decision-making process back then. So what happened that um, I guess enabled or allowed you to access that wisdom through your body, which I'm hearing today you have more awareness around and more respect for, perhaps.
It was towards the end of my legal career. And I was getting sick and I was seeing a doctor, but I kept getting sick. And it ended up, what was like, I was taking 2 extra strength Advil, sleeping for an hour. That was it. I was in such pain. And, this prairie populist, well, you don't go and see a doctor. Got to be
Mm.
really, really sick. And by the time I went to see the doctor, I was jaundiced. I mean, emergency. I was jaundiced, and my urine was almost the color of tea.
Oh, good heavens. Yeah.
So I had a gallstone in my bile duct
Mm.
that was 10 millimeters,
That's a good
and it took
size.
3 surgeries to blast it out.
Oh, wow.
And it was after that experience that really caused me to see this connection between what I was doing and the impact of my body. And I've been very hard about on me and law. And it isn't that simple because the part of law that I always really loved and still loved is equity.
Ah.
fairness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's substance over form,
Mm-hmm. Tell us
if
a
that
little
makes
bit.
sense.
Yeah, I'd love you to go a little deeper into that. What does that mean to you?
Well, so for example, in the practice I have now as a divorce mediator, divorce strategist, it's it's taking it out of the realm of legal concepts. So for example, late in my legal career, I represented this gentleman. They went to mediation. They never talked about spousal support. Her lawyer drafted the agreement, their spousal support, right? And there's no way he was going to pay spousal support. So I said to him, well, she stayed home with the kids. Would you be okay with paying her a gift for that contribution? And he was fine with paying her a gift, right?
Mm.
There's an example of substance over form.
Mm-hmm.
And and the person who had the most trouble with that resolution was the other lawyer. She actually said, well, how are we going to put that in the agreement? I said, we're not.
Mm.
It's a gift. But if your
Mm.
client agrees to it, the bank draft will come with the signed agreement. That's right.
Yeah,
It's what's most important and how do we achieve it? We don't have to call it
right.
this what the law says it has to be called. What works for you?
This is, yeah, you're really touching on something so important here around as you said, as I mentioned earlier, the CEO of their own lives. So there's taking
Mhm.
control of how the decision is made, what is underlying the decision. There's another piece here, the reframing of, from spousal support to a gift. That reframing gave him access to something, a different feeling, a different
Mhm.
sense of what that meant. Then the other thing I'm hearing from you is your creative energy around how can we make this happen so it's peaceful and productive for everybody? And,
Well,
you're
it's so how can we make it happen so everybody feels like they're winning,
nice. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like the pain is there, but it doesn't like I once had a client fairly early on in my career. Um, they needed help to divide spices. Like they were getting everything in the house figured out. That
Mm-hmm.
included spices.
Mm-hmm.
And and I remembered that. So when I was looking at ending my marriage and I was terrified
Mm-hmm.
of divorce, my kids were 2 and 7. I was convinced I'd never be able to support myself. I was convinced it would ruin them for
Mm-hmm.
life, especially with, having had experiences like that. Um, like I knew with divorce, it isn't one person winning and one person losing, regardless of what the court judgment says. It's
Mm-hmm.
everybody loses or everyone wins. So
Mm-hmm.
I set out to do things differently, and I had no idea what I was doing. Like I had to rack my brain thinking, do I know of any single moms who have healthy, well-adjusted kids?
This was through your
And
own
I could,
journey going through divorce, right? That we're talking about here to set
yeah,
out doing things differently.
yeah,
You wanted your personal divorce to look different.
yeah.
Mm, mm-hmm,
So I could think of two women with healthy, well-adjusted kids, two single moms. And I thought, well, if they did it, okay, it's possible for me too.
mm-hmm,
And it was actually very fortunate that I had worked on a really ugly child protection file at one stage because my client had got a social worker to help her. And we would go back to court so frequently. The social worker would always say, kids love their parents no matter what.
mm-hmm,
That stuck with me.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So when I was looking at divorce, my goal was actually that my children would have the best relationship possible with their father. I didn't know how that would happen,
Hmm.
because it was pretty rocky at that stage, at that time. And I figured it would take about 5 years. That was what my
Mm-hmm.
instinct said.
There's your body again.
Yeah, that was before when I didn't think I was listening
Yeah.
to my body at
Yeah.
all. But there were times, and it really turned out well.
What do you think supported you to have the courage to do things differently and to explore that? Where do you think that came from?
That was love of my kids, right? Like I
Mm,
didn't have my self-esteem was in such a bad spot then. I didn't think I deserved anything better. But for my kids, that's what gave me the courage. I wanted better for them.
mhm. Isn't that interesting? You're really touching on something so important that often our courage, it's not stemmed from what we want for ourselves. Courage is so often, if not, and I don't know, from my experience, it seems like most of the time, it's something in service of others that is very important to us, and that's where our courage comes from. How do you
And
experience? Go ahead. Hmm.
well, I was going to say, and people who knew both my husband and me would say to me, Kim, how did you do it?
Mm.
Because they knew that was not the outcome that anyone would have expected or predicted.
Hmm.
Um, and I would always just say, oh, it was nothing. Like anybody can do this. And I genuinely believed that. Um, I did.
Hmm. Hmm.
And until I had a cousin who was going through a really ugly traditional divorce battle, like really ugly. And he walked off the face of the earth, and his body was found about 3 months later. That was when I knew, holy crap, Kim, you did do something special, and no other family deserves that kind of an outcome. You need to figure out what you did.
Hmm. So, how did you go about doing that? How did you start figuring out what you did to create that outcome?
Well, I remember having an appointment with an osteopath, and she was like, "You are stressed, Kim. You are so stressed." And I'm talking about my job, how I didn't like it, didn't fit in. And she said, "Well, do you know what you want to do?" And so I told her about helping parents divorce peacefully, right? And she said to me, "Oh, I have a client for you. Can I share your information with my client?" And I said, "No, I'm not ready."
Mm.
And then she phoned me. At the end of the conversation, because I started out going, "No, I am not
I
ready."
love that.
And at the end of the conversation, I said, "Look, I am never going to be ready, so just give her my number."
There you go.
And it was a really challenging situation. Likely, I think, to this day, one of the most challenging I've done. And our last session, we met in a coffee shop with their 2-year-old daughter to celebrate.
Mm. Hmm. Hmm. So, what about that specific story stands out for you that made it your approach unique? What did you learn as you were supporting this first client on this journey?
Well, I didn't think it was unique,
Mm.
right? This is back to me going, "Oh, anybody can do this." That didn't happen until I did mediation last year with a couple who'd worked with another mediator years earlier. And they said to me, one of them, like she said, "Oh, I have PTSD from working with the first mediator." And they'd settled with the first mediator, right?
Hmm.
And then he said, "Yeah, it was a real cluster F."
Hmm.
And that was when I realized, oh, I do get different results.
Hmm. Around this win-win for the win-win-win, like it's win for everybody all
Mhm,
around,
mhm.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
beautiful. What I just wanting to summarize because I think there's so much, so many connected dots here that in your story as we see going out, what's really standing out for me is this concept of initially your resistance to the law, the experience that made you rethink that perhaps with the timeshare experience and knowing how it feels to
Hmm.
not understand how to navigate that. Starting that piece really gave you a different kind of experience or personal relationship with the law, I might suggest. Is that
Hmm.
accurate?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Um,
I hadn't seen that before today, so thank you.
oh, you're welcome. Yeah. So that different experience gave you access to being able to become a lawyer, but then your body started talking to you, right? And your body started saying, huh, and then you started paying attention there. The things that started to really pop here for me were around this idea of where you talked about your courage and setting out to do things differently for yourself. The piece here that I find really, really interesting is, as we talked about before, that the courage is something that is so often an outside force, right? And we often think that we need to, as entrepreneurs especially, we need to draw on the courage from within. But so often it's an outside force. And we may want to call that, in your case, it was your love for your children. Or other people's case, it could very well be a passion for some kind of difference that they want to make in the world, whatever that is. But it's got to be an outside force that pulls us into this, what
Hmm.
I like to call the sustainable courage. It's not just the, overnight, oh, this sounds like a great idea. Then tomorrow morning, it's not such a great idea. So that courage is such an important piece when it's from outside in contribution or in service of something bigger and more important than ourselves. Then you said, anyone can do it. And yet at the same time, no, I'm not ready. Isn't that curious? We have these, no, I'm not ready. You said, don't give, your physio said, oh, or your osteo said, no, can I give you the number? You said, no, 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 I'm not ready. But then you're like, well, anyone can do it. I just did. Anyone can do it. So there's this moment where I think in services, when we're recognizing and starting to become aware of our gifts, we have that inner conflict,
Hmm.
right? We have this moment where like, I'm not ready. I'm not prepared. I'm not sad. I'm not good enough. I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't decoded it, whatever it is. And yet at the same time, we've already done it. And it feels almost too easy to be valid.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm really glad we're having this conversation today because my business, I'm adding a new service and it's my lawyer-free divorce course, right? And I'm so wildly excited about it because once again, it's about helping parents be able to figure things out and navigate the law
And look at that. Here
in
you're
a
going
way
full
that,
circle to not wanting the law to be involved again, right? Where you're getting away from the form of the law and focusing on the
mhm,
structure. You said that the
the
substance over the
substance,
form, right? And so
right?
that's what you're doing here, I imagine, are you?
It's Well, yeah, because what it is, I mean, the law, the law is not this creature that's proactive. Something bad has to happen, and then government steps in, or the courts have made decisions to figure out an area where there is some upheaval, some friction between
Mm,
people. So it doesn't start with calling it divorce or child support. It starts with how do we end our marriage? How do we provide for our kids? Right? It's bringing it back to, okay, this is really what it's about. And
mm,
when you use that language and reframe that way, people recognize their power.
mhm. So there you are doing the reframing again. So instead of seeing it as an end to a divorce, it's about finding a path forward to provide for the children. Is that what I'm hearing?
Hmm.
Outcome
Yes.
focused. And again, the interesting thing here is what um, you're framing around the positive outcome as opposed to an end in divorce is a very negative frame around things.
Hmm.
And it feels like it to me, I haven't experienced divorce, but I'm imagining that most people feel a sense of loss, a feeling of fear. Like there's a lot of, I would imagine, negative emotion around that. Where when you're
Hmm.
thinking about providing for your children, I would imagine that most of us have positive feelings around providing for our children. Does that resonate?
Exactly.
How you,
Yeah,
yeah.
completely. And part of what put me on to this and being able to articulate it is there's a woman here in Regina, Frances Olson. She was the first female real estate broker in Canada.
Mm.
Her husband had lost his job. They needed money. And and she led this really great life. And I asked her once, what's your best memory? Right? Like she was an international speaker. She said, the birth of my first child.
Mm.
And it was, if this person who led such a life, that's her best memory. You know, she was 90, I think, when I asked her the question. I'm like, all right. And it's also like I remember, so the gallstone story, a few years, couple years later, I'm still practicing law. It reared up. I have no gallbladder then, but I have this massive gallbladder attack, and I'm in the hospital for 4 days. I get out. 4 days later, I have settlement discussions for a family law client, and I'm sitting in the lobby of the other lawyer's office, and I'm like, crap, my brain is not going to carry me through this. I am
Mm.
not anywhere in shape for this. So I just asked the universe, what do I do? And what the voice said to me, lead with the children, start with the children. So when we got in the room, the four of us, I asked the spouse about the kids. It shifted everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's gorgeous. It's this, you have a gift for reframing. And it's true. It shifts everything. And when you say everything, I mean, I have my ideas what that means. I would love to hear what it means for you when you say it shifts everything. What is everything for you?
It breaks down walls,
Mm,
right? And the preconceived notions. The fact is, in a marriage, in any kind of relationship, it isn't all bad or all good. And of course, our memories are not based on where we are, what actually happened. They're based on where we are today. Dr. Benjamin Hardy's work. What happens is when you get people, and it gets back to this, children love their parents no matter what. Parents love their children no matter what, too. So where I take people is back to when they loved each other
hmm
through the kids.
hmm And what do you notice when people reconnect with that love that they may be disconnected with in that moment? What changes? What do you see and what do you experience then?
People want to be fair,
Tell us more.
right?
Yeah, and there's that equity piece that you referenced really early on in this conversation.
Uh-huh. Yes. Well, and I discovered this in my personal situation because when I told my husband that he should move out, I actually shared some of my best memories from our time together, and I didn't make it about me versus him.
Mm-hmm.
It was about our children deserve better from us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we want them to grow into their best versions of themselves, we can't live together.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think, okay, I'm going to refer to an outside source. I didn't know why it worked then, but when I was working on my master's, focusing on real property, indefeasibility of title, because I'm from the farm and land matters, um, I came across an article. I was doing research for a couple of profs on collaborative dispute resolution in business and commercial disputes. Came across this article from the Harvard Law Negotiation Review. Lead author, fellow named Jim Golden. But it was about if you apply empathy to the practice of law. And he used the example of a trucking company. And of course, often when a car is in a motor vehicle accident with a semi, you know who loses.
Mhm.
The traditional approach of law in a situation like that is for the owner of the truck to sit back and wait for the other side to file a statement of claim,
Mhm.
right? To sue for damages. And then to make it difficult for the other side to get the information to assess the claim. And it's very
Mhm.
much me against you.
Mhm.
What this trucking company did was they'd phone the funeral home and say, look, this is horrific. And they were doing it from a genuine place of care, right? We're all humans. People deserve empathy. Can we have a representative at the funeral, at the service? We want to honor the family. Who can we talk to on behalf of the family? Look, this is absolutely horrific. Your life is turned upside down in a moment. We get that. We want to help. How much money do you need to get you through the next 6 months? No strings attached.
Mhm.
Okay, here's a copy of the driver's abstract. Here's a copy of the truck's mechanical records. What other information do you need
Mhm.
to help you answer these initial questions?
Mhm.
All before the statement of claim was issued.
Mhm.
Taking that approach,
Mhm.
their insurance premiums with Lloyd's of London decreased by $1 million a year. That was the first time I saw it in print.
Mhm.
When you treat somebody fairly
Mhm.
and you honor them and where they're
Mhm.
at when you're in a dispute with them, I shouldn't say it's the first time I saw it. It was first time I saw it in print. I had experienced it. Um, they want to be fair.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You're calling up, I think, what's coming up for me is this concept of people want to be seen, they want to be felt, they want to be heard, right? People just want to be, and you, in your word, you use the word honor, right? Honor people. People want to be honored. And I think fundamentally, people want to honor others as well. And here, when we are in
Mhm.
conflict-oriented circumstances, when we honor the people, ourselves and others, when we honor all the stakeholders who are impacted, and we allow for empathy where we see them, we feel or understand what they're going through, we hear the pain, we hear what they're wanting, etc. It seems to change it. It really does. It settles the whole thing down, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And it turns the dispute into it can be healing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, very much so. I can hear that in your voice. If your tone just changed. What just happened for you in that moment? Something happened there.
Well, just it's a reaffirmation that I'm on the right path with what I'm doing, that it's good work.
Mm.
Because when we
Mhm.
get in the trenches, we don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Because for me, like for example, reframing, that's just something I do,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? That's
Easy.
just
It's
what I
just,
do.
yeah.
And
Anyone
it
can do
doesn't
it.
have to be exactly, it doesn't have to be divorce. It's something I've always done. And even when I last taught judo, and I was teaching a parent and taught class, like 4 to 6 year olds and their parents at a level that worked for everybody. That's what I was doing. was reframing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, it's interesting what's coming up for me here is I'm looking at my other screen because judo, what does judo mean? I read it somewhere and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but you know what it means.
Judo means the gentle way.
Full circle. Full circle.
And and there's two principles to judo. And I haven't been seriously involved in judo for years, so I'm not up on the newest translation. But how I know those principles are the first one is a maximum efficiency with minimum effort.
Mm. Hmm.
And the second one is mutual welfare and benefit.
Oh, that's interesting. Hmm.
Those principles underscore everything I do.
And that started when you were a teenager and probably before.
Before. Yeah.
So, maximum efficiency with minimal effort and
With minimum
mutual
effort.
minimum effort and mutual welfare and benefit for all. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That sounds to me very much like the principles that guide you today in your practice as well, in serving your
They
clients, right?
definitely they definitely do. And it's, and somebody from the outside would think a martial art, high conflict,
Mm-hmm.
there can't be any mutual welfare and benefit. In judo, though, you're acting in a way so your partner doesn't get hurt.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? Like, I'm just finding this fascinating because even to your point, you know, in this metaphor, I'm thinking, you know, law could represent many of the other martial arts where there is conflict, you're inflicting pain or you're inflicting injury or putting yourself at an advantage, if you will. In most, I
Yeah.
studied Taekwondo as a teenager. So yeah, and
Okay.
my favorite I really liked putting on our pads and just going at the sparring and just having tons of fun. Because I mean, I was a small person, I couldn't hurt anybody, but they could hurt me. So I had to be really careful. But
Well, yeah, I perfected a death stare when I was competitive in judo.
right,
But it was to win,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, with
But
those
these
same principles.
underlying values, like when you throw somebody, you hold on to them.
To take care
That
of
keeps
mutual,
them
yeah.
safe,
Really,
right?
so no one else is hurting. That's yeah. So there is yeah, it's beautiful. It's a kind and a kind way to be in conflict, if you will. It feels like
Mhm.
where you're both going to come out with, you know, to your point, where you're going to both come out with honor and dignity. So honoring the other person, dignity and self-respect. You're going to come away with a sense of that. Just the goodness. That's the sense. I'm not a judo practitioner, but that's what
Well,
I'm
and
hearing.
I mean, like I broke my arm in judo when I was 11, right? Like you have an obligation to take care of yourself too. If
Right.
somebody has an arm bar on you, you better tap out or you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have you,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
you're going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm. And there's
But there are the rules
self-responsibility.
in
Yeah.
place. Yes,
Yeah.
right?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Because self-responsibility is a huge part. We need to be responsible in ourselves for ourselves in any kind of
Hmm.
situation like that to some degree, right? The other party has a responsibility to us and to themselves and vice versa. In that it's I just find this so fascinating, Kim, because as we look at your whole journey, we're seeing the whole arc come, and again, like I said, full circle. This is just fascinating to me, and yet at the same time in my work differentiating clients and helping them understand what their potential is to bring value in their unique way, this is exactly the arc of the story, right, where it starts way back and we go through a journey and we start connecting dots and we see that, just like you said earlier, no, I'm not ready, but anyone can do it. And then realize, wait, I am ready and anyone can't do it. And
Yeah.
that's the moment where we really start to honor, we move away from the form of our craft and we get into the substance of our craft, which is what you have
Hmm.
been doing in this part of your journey, as you realizing letting go of the law and really listening to and paying attention to the breadcrumbs, right?
Well, and letting go of the law has been a really tough journey,
I would imagine. Mm-hmm.
a
What
really
is it?
tough
What
journey.
has been noticeably challenging or tough for you?
Well, I think I liked there's a certain cachet to saying, I'm a lawyer that
Mm-hmm.
garners a certain level of respect
Mm-hmm.
that even when people don't like lawyers. And of course, when you've experienced success in an area, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's when I think about it, like practicing law, I mean, because I use the reframing and the strategic brain a lot there to great success, right? Um, but it's not my zone of excellence. It's pushing out of the zone of excellence in pursuit of zone of genius
Exactly.
is a really tough step to take.
Mm-hmm.
And even like so my judge days, I was deputy director, the Office of Residential Tenancies of Saskatchewan, and I'd been a hearing officer before. So it's like a judge light, right? In that there I was hearing evidence, taking evidence, having to decide who's more credible, applying the law. Here's what happens. And I went to inactive membership in the Law Society, shut down my practice to do that. And I quickly realized this isn't me. Like, and people wanted to settle. I settled so many tough files there. Surprise, surprise. Um, but it wasn't the direction the office was wanting to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but I stayed as an inactive member. And initially I thought when I turn 55, I can retire. I'll retire at 55. I didn't. I think I was 57. And when I looked at the rules to retire, it said I had to be in active practice to retire. And I thought, this gets back to prairie populist, this story. I didn't want it. Like, and I'm not in active practice. And then I looked at leaving the practice and something you had to have done something bad. You had to have been disciplined and facing disbarment, or you had to have missed paying your fees, right? Something bad. And I went, but this isn't, I'm not doing this because I've done something bad.
Right.
I'm doing this to move forward.
Right.
So I filled in the document saying I'm retiring, knowing I didn't fit the form,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Mm-hmm.
went, this this
Mm-hmm.
is accurate. And then 2 years later, I get an email. We're doing away with the retired lawyer category. And automatically, unless you tell us otherwise, you will be an inactive member of the Law Society again. At that point, having to leave again,
Mm-hmm.
it felt good. It felt,
Interesting. Yeah. Well,
right? There
yeah,
wasn't the
yeah,
same level of loss.
right. Because, yeah, it would have been the first time around. And interesting to hear you're coming back to this idea of form over substance or substance over form. So often we allow the form, and it's subconscious, I believe, for most of us, we allow the form to dictate
Mm-hmm.
how we experience the rest, or the substance, if you will. So the substance that we can or might experience is limited by the form inside which we are bound, right? And
Yeah.
so by releasing yourself, in this case, actually giving up your membership to the Law Society, by doing that, you were able to be more creative with to your point, move from the zone of excellence as a lawyer and move towards the zone of genius with some
Mm-hmm.
trepidation. It's not an easy journey
I
to let go of everything that has been be under the pillars of the foundation of our success for so long, right? That's really tough. It's hard to do that. The things that we build on, and then we have to actually let go of those and trust that they will be there as to help inform the future
Mhm.
as we're
And
redefining and recreating ourselves in this new zone.
and and I'm redefining that again
Yeah.
because initially it was very much this transition was very much based on the law and processes that exist,
Mm-hmm.
structures that exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the mediation piece.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And I'm moving, I still do some mediation, but what's really lighting me up, right, is the course. And then I have a ritual for divorce that I've used with my clients that I'm going to be marketing. And it's the notion is of helping more families
Mm-hmm.
back to that bigger why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the nature of this work, and doing it one-on-one, it's very rewarding and it's very draining. This
Mm.
is not cookie cutter
Mm-hmm.
going from one meeting to another meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not serving people that way. But the notion of this course, and people get this new reframe
Mm-hmm.
with, with resources like they're getting, here's what needs to be in a separation agreement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Here's how you check the legal requirements where you live.
So you're empowering people yet again to be the CEO
Yeah.
of their own life and
Mhm.
to drive their own
Exactly.
results, however they want that to look. And, here's again courage, right? So your courage to take this step and to redefine again and to, in a sense, not redefine it. That's a poor word, actually. I feel like you're expanding into further genius in your zone of the greatest contribution
Mhm.
you can bring to the world. You're expanding into that. So it's a new level and it requires a certain degree of courage again and again, as we're talking about, it's about empowering people and there's an outside force in play here, right?
Mhm.
In service of others and their outcomes as opposed to what you're needing from this. Courage isn't sustainable that way. It's gorgeous. So Kim, as we're coming to this point, we've seen how many times in this circle you're consistent throughout, and I really respect that, honor that, and thank you for sharing that. Um, what I'm seeing is again with the differentiation that I do, the work that I do, one of the things that um, you're really in tuned and attuned to is these voices inside and the sense of being in service of others in integrity with who you want to be. So there's a deep connection with how you want to create and deliver value for others that is honoring and respecting who you are as well as a human. And the magic that's coming from that is evidently very powerful for all of your people as well as for yourself. It's gorgeous. Is there anything
Thank you
there?
for seeing me.
Oh, it's stunning. I have thank you. I appreciate that. I have one other question for you, just before we wind up, because I'm wondering if you think about your journey and the time when, you were in that moment of real transformation, which is, I'm not ready and it's so easy. Anyone can do it. What advice might you give someone who's early in their journey? If they are back there prior to that moment of discovery or that period of discovery for you, what advice might you offer them to help them find the courage and to create value differently within this form and substance model?
To create differently, that courage. I think this is something that I actually work on with my clients all the time, right? Because it
Mhm.
is it's the same journey
Yeah, beautiful.
with divorce. And the thing is, there's only one right time, and that's when you take action. And nobody from the outside can tell you when that is.
Mhm.
And if it's a strong enough, if it's strong enough, right, to do it. And that could be the why for somebody else. It could be even like and I think there comes a time, and I'm thinking about me and I'm thinking about my clients, when it's this line in the sand moment
Mm-hmm.
and something happens that shifts everything. Because that's the other piece of the puzzle. And not to beat yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Don't beat yourself up. And I think in reframing that, it's honor that moment and really listen to
Mm-hmm.
the call to do something different. I think it speaks to a certain degree of readiness. It says, hey, it's now, it's
And
time, you're ready, even though you don't feel necessarily ready.
and and that line in the sand moment might be traumatic enough
Mm-hmm.
that it takes you a while to unpack it. And I'm thinking of me with the health challenges.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's okay too. That's just part of the journey. And it's about, I guess it's about choosing life because ultimately, with my health challenges and why I didn't go back to law,
Mm-hmm.
is I had a strong sense that I could die the next time
Mm.
if I'm
Powerful.
not true to me.
Yeah, that's a
So,
great, that's a profound truth bomb in that sense, where yes, there's if we're not true to ourselves, we can die physically because our body will, um, support that, if you will. We
mhm.
can also die metaphorically by becoming apathetic and just losing ourselves and going through the motions, but we are not engaged if we're not true to ourselves. It's hard to live a full and meaningful
Mhm.
life if we're not true to ourselves. So thank you for that gift. Yeah. Beautiful. Kim, as we're winding up today, for those who would like to connect with you for a more peaceful experience as they transition their family to a different place, how might they find you?
um, I'm redoing my website. So if you go to a website, if you see this right away, and there's kimkorven.com and it's this ugly little website, do not despair. There's a better one coming.
Okay. KimKorven.com is
Okay.
where people would go.
Yeah.
All righty. And is there another, are you active on any of the other social channels? Are you active on LinkedIn perhaps or anywhere else?
LinkedIn. Yeah.
LinkedIn. Okay. Perfect.
LinkedIn is a good one. Is a good one to find
Great.
me.
All righty. We'll find you there and make sure those links are available to you and to those who are joining us. Amazing. Kim, thank you so much for today. It's been an absolutely delightful conversation. Really appreciate you for being here.
It's been enlightening for me too. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.